Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, yo, I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to episode 66 of Buha's Block. On today's episode, we're going to be discussing 5 trends from the Lakers' 5-game win streak, 5 things that have stood out to me during that stretch. But before we get started, you guys know the drill. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. And for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. So for those watching on YouTube, you can see I am back in Los Angeles. I am back in my home studio. I did end up making my 6 a.m. flight. I just ended up pulling an all-nighter, but I am back, and the Lakers had practice today. The only real updates from practice were Rui Hachimura did not participate, and he is expected to be questionable for tomorrow's game against the Utah Jazz. JJ Redick did say that he expects him to return at some point this week. And Cam Reddish did participate in practice. He participated in the live portion against coaches. The Lakers did not go player versus player in terms of live scrimmaging. So with Cam Reddish, it seems like he is trending toward returning on Tuesday, if not on Thursday. And then before we start with trend number 1, I just want to hit on this notion that I've seen out there that the Lakers are only winning because it's been an easy stretch of schedule. And I think 2 things can be true. I think on the one hand, the Lakers are benefiting right now from an easy stretch of schedule. If you look at the 5 opponents they beat, Philadelphia without Joel Embiid and without Tyrese Maxey, Paul George was on a minutes restriction. Then you got the Raptors, who are one of the worst teams in the league, also without their best player in Scotty Barnes. Then you have the Memphis Grizzlies, who were without Ja Morant, Desmond Bane. That's 2 of their 3 best players. And then they go out on the road, play the Spurs in the first NBA Cup game. So you know it was a game the Lakers were going to come correct in. It was a very high-level game. And then second night of a back-to-back against New Orleans, and that MASH unit without Zion Williamson, without CJ McCollum, without DeJounte Murray, without Herb Jones, without Trey Murphy. So that's 5 of their best 6 players and 4/5 of their starting lineup. So the Lakers had some injuries in that one as well, but nothing compared to what New Orleans is going through. But on the other hand, and this is the second point for me, is the Lakers are playing high-level basketball. Like, both things can be true. They have been benefiting from an easier schedule, but they've also been making the most of it with the league's best offense over this 5-game span and the league's 5th best net rating over that stretch as well. So the Lakers have been playing high-level basketball. They've also, as I just mentioned, have been dealing with injuries. Rui Hachimura has missed a couple of games. Cam Reddish has missed a couple of games. Jackson Hayes has missed a few games. And they're already without Jared Vanderbilt and Christian Wood. So you look at that, and that's a lot of front court players, a lot of front court size and length and athleticism that they're currently missing. And they've had to play smaller lineups, more 3-guard lineups, more even 4-guard lineups, depending on how you want to categorize Dalton Knecht or Cam Reddish at the 4. But it's not been ideal for the Lakers. They have not had their best defenders outside of Anthony Davis consistently during the stretch. I just wanted to say, like, 2 things can be true. Those saying the Lakers have played an easy schedule during this 5-game stretch, yes, you are correct, but I think you are also underplaying how good they have been playing. And 9-4, the number 4 seed in the West right now. And my final point on this is that good teams take care of their winnable games against bad teams. That is the hallmark of a good team. They always beat the bad teams, and then they tend to be above average or good against good teams. But you need to take care of business when you're playing a team under 500. And the Lakers are now 5-1 against teams under 500, which is tied for the 4th best record in the Western Conference. For some perspective, last year they were 8th in the Western Conference in terms of record against opponents under 500. So you've seen that jump up in terms of them taking care of business and beating these lesser teams on the schedule. And then also they are 4-3 against teams above 500, when last year they were 26-29 against teams above 500. So going from a below 500 record to slightly above 500 record. And that is why they have a 9-4 record right now. And again, I know, Memphis was the team that technically was above 500. And so that's going to affect that a bit. But I just think you can acknowledge the easier schedule while also acknowledging the level at which this group has been playing at. There are a lot of things to be optimistic about with this group throughout the entire season, but also specifically that 5-game stretch. So that's my piece on the Lakers and their recent schedule, their recent success. And now let's get into 5 trends from the 5-game win streak. Trend number 1 is Dalton Knecht's breakout. And Dalton Knecht has scored 19 points, 14 points, and 27 points in his last 3 games, respectively. And he has officially broken out. He's officially arrived. And we had seen the flashes, the glimpses of it throughout Summer League, throughout the preseason, and even early on in the season, especially that fourth quarter performance he had against Cleveland in garbage time. But he had not yet made a sizable impact or contribution offensively within the competitive portions of games through the first 10 games. And it was that Memphis game where he broke out and scored a flurry of points between the end of the third into the early fourth. And part of this stretch has certainly, again, we'll acknowledge some lesser teams and some lesser defenses. Rui's been out for part of that stretch. Cam's been out. So there has been more opportunity for Dalton. He has started the last couple of games, but he's made the most out of that opportunity. But he's made the most with that opportunity. And I really think the cat's out of the bag here, where you can't play Dalton fewer than 24, 25 minutes a night moving forward. And that's regardless of if he is starting or coming off the bench. I think the Lakers will keep him coming off the bench for now. And maybe that changes when, or if and when Jared Vanderbilt returns. And maybe he takes the Cam Reddish spot and then Dalton can replace Rui and move him to the bench. He right now is leading the rookie class in 3-point percentage at 40.4%. First among rookies that have attempted at least 25 3-pointers. I misspoke on my last post-game reaction. I said 15. It was actually 25, but impressive nonetheless. And this was a guy who through the first 10 games was shooting 28.9% on threes. So that shows you how, one, how well he shot it over the last 3 games, but 2, how small of sample sizes we are dealing with right now. So a 3-game hot streak can drastically swing your 3-point percentage by nearly 12% if you're a guy like Dalton Knecht. But Knecht, to me, it's not just the shooting, right? Because I think the Lakers have had this need for an elite shooter for years now. And have really tried different guys out in that role, and just the variations of ways that the Lakers can use him off the ball. Lakers just have not had a shooter of this caliber through this stretch with LeBron and AD. The thing with Dalton is, again, not just the shooting, but it is the constant movement and the ways that leads to openings. Like, he's been really good at slot cuts, cuts from the elbows, and just cutting into space. He's constantly curling. And it's like, if you're going to overplay him, if you're going to top block him, he's going to back cut, or if you're going to overplay him for the shot, he's going to worm his way to the rim and he's going to dunk on you. And that's the thing. And people like to say sneaky athletic because he's a white guy, right? But he will dunk on you. And we've seen it now multiple times where he will cut, he will get an on-time, on-target pass from usually LeBron, but sometimes D'Lo or Austin, and he will dunk on you if he has enough runway to get to the rim. He's really good at jumping off of 2 feet. And I had to triple check this because it was just an insane number to me. But Dalton is shooting 93.8% within 3 feet of the rim. And that's certainly not sustainable. That would break an NBA record for shooting within 3 feet. That's beyond Shaq level. But the point is, he's an impressive finisher, and that is an impressive figure. And if he can keep that up, 75-ish%, mid to high 70s, like that's an elite figure that I think is reflective of his athleticism. Now, the one downside, and it's a big downside with Dalton right now, is the defensive end. And Cran just had a tweet, I believe it was yesterday on Sunday, that Dalton is leading the rookie class in their offensive LeBron metric, which is their version, of an all-in-one metric, and he is last in the rookie class in the defensive LeBron, and that just shows where he is right now. Where offensively he is ready to contribute and contribute at a high level, but the defensive end has been concerning, and teams have progressively gotten smarter with trying to target him. And you've seen it where they will have whoever Dalton is guarding come up and screen for a primary ball handler or scorer. They will have, because the Lakers can switch so much in certain lineups, they will try to get the switch with Dalton onto that guy. And so for now, I think Dalton is better suited coming off the bench. But as I said, he deserves to be playing 24, 25 plus minutes a night. He should be the spot starter on nights that Rui is out. And Dalton is going to be in the mix for Rookie of the Year, and I think a closing lock for this group moving forward, or at least in that small group that's being considered for closing spots. So Dalton is exceeding expectations. He is actualizing his potential as a shooter, as an off-ball weapon, as a cutter, as a finisher. Really good. I should have mentioned running the lane in transition and finishing there. The defensive end is a concern, and it's an area that he still has a lot of room for improvement in, but right now, he is looking like the steal of the first round, or at least one of the steals of the first round. Another hit for the Lakers and their scouting department. This, to me, is the biggest thing from these 5 games, has been the emergence of Dalton, the breakout of Dalton. And I think moving forward, he's going to be a big piece of the Lakers rotation. Trend number 2 is the new starting lineup has brought balance to the rotation. And so JJ Redick made the bold decision to move D'Angelo Russell to the bench coming off the Lakers' 5-game road trip in which they went just 1-4, including that Memphis game where D'Lo got benched for the final quarter and a half after taking a contested step back 3-pointer in the quarter against Jay Huff that was easily swatted. It was a poor decision, but also having consecutive really head-scratching defensive possessions in a row. There's certainly some risk in moving D'Lo to the bench, but thus far it has worked incredibly well. The Lakers are 5-0 with D'Angelo Russell coming off the bench. And looking at his numbers here, so the usage percentage has gone up by about 2%. It's back, still not at the 24 levels, but he has been playing with the ball more in his hands. He's been a bit more aggressive offensively in terms of looking for his shot. His assists have decreased, and that's where you've seen his role shift to being more of a playmaker in that starting unit, trying to get AD, LeBron, Austin involved. He's been more of a scorer, more of like a bench gunner with the bench unit. His assists have dropped from 5.8 per game over the first 8 games to 3.4 over these last 5. His points have actually been about the same at around 12, and that's partly been because he's had a couple of rough games back to back offensively, but his percentages have really increased, going from 37.5% from the field to 46%. So that's almost like an 8.5% percent increase, and then 29.2% on threes, all the way up to 40%. So that's almost an 11% increase on threes. And I think you've just seen a better version of D'Lo coming off the bench. And I think the Lakers are also less reliant on him, where like that, when I've talked about moving D'Lo to the bench through the preseason and early in the season, that was my biggest point, was that the Lakers needed to get to the point where they can move D'Lo to the bench and just not be reliant on him. And whether that's eventually trading him at some point, or just certain games they're not going to close with him, he's going to play fewer minutes, as we've seen in some of these recent games, including on this trip. I think the Lakers have ever just ripped the Band-Aid off with the D'Lo situation, and it's now in restructured the offense, restructured the starting lineup, and even restructured the rotation, where D'Lo is still 4th in the team in usage. So it's not like they are not relying on him at all. And he's still a valuable shooter, shot maker, playmaker, ball handler, all those things. Like he's still bringing value and has been actually first on the team in plus minus over this stretch. They've just restructured things in a more sustainable way where they're not as reliant on him. And I think when you look at potentially making a trade and including him, or just not having to close games or play him a certain amount of minutes, that to me is a better path forward for them, where if he is more engaged in trying defensively, performing better defensively, you can play him 30 plus minutes a night. If he is on one of his hot streaks or one of his flurries, like, you can play him more, you can empower him more. Now, the other side of this is Cam Reddish has been the starter, and he's had a couple of rough games, but he has been the Lakers' best perimeter defender this season. I would say Gabe Vincent, given his size limitations, has probably been comparable. But when you look at the actual size and factor those limitations in, Cam Reddish to me has been their best perimeter defender. So Cam has made an impact. I suspect he will continue starting. I think Max Christie makes that conversation a little bit more interesting if Cam ever moves back to the bench as to like who should be playing between those two, given the level of play we've seen from Max recently. But I think the Lakers, they needed more defense. They needed more athleticism and length. They needed more energy in that starting group. Cam replacing D'Lo has brought that. I think D'Lo has played better. He's looked better. And again, in the big picture, LA is less reliant on him, which I think is a key for this group. Trend number 3 is Point LeBron is back, and he never really left. Point LeBron is always there. It is inherent. It is intrinsic to who LeBron James is. He is one of the greatest passers of all time. But we saw a bit of a shift at the beginning of the season with AD being more of the playmaking hub, the fulcrum of the offense, with Austin being empowered with the ball more in his hands, becoming that true number 3, or clear number 3 at least, within the pecking order, and him running more two-man action with AD, and even D'Lo still being in the starting group. And just there being so many ball handlers and shot makers and playmakers within that starting group and playing 30 plus minutes a night, LeBron took a slight step back to start the season. And we do see this year over year with LeBron, where he tends to start seasons a little bit slower. He likes to look at it like a marathon and pace himself and really ramp up in January, February, March, leading up into April through June. So this checks out with some of the trends. If you go year over year, look at LeBron's monthly splits, he tends to ramp up during the course of the season. That said, I mean, he was averaging a career low usage percentage. He was posting a career low in field goal attempts per game, second lowest scoring average of his career. And those trends have actually continued through this 5-game stretch. And I buried the lead here a bit because LeBron had 4 triple doubles consecutively during this 5-game stretch. It is the first time in LeBron's unprecedented, legendary career that he has had 4 consecutive triple doubles. Doing that, year 22, age 39, just ridiculous, insane stuff from LeBron. But we've seen this shift now. If you look at his game logs, he has now had double-digit assists in 6 of the last 8 games. So even leading into that triple-double streak, he had a couple of games with double digits. There was the game in Memphis where he had to be more of a scorer, had 39 points. Also, no AD, no Rui. So the offensive options in terms of assists were a bit limited there. But outside of that game, LeBron has become more of a facilitator going on a couple of weeks now. And I mean, through the first 8 games, he was averaging 7.5 assists. So it wasn't like he wasn't a facilitator or primary ball handler, but we've seen that jump up from 7.5 to 12 over these last 5 games. And there's been a material shift. I went back and looked at all 120 of LeBron's assists this season, and you're just seeing them use him more in the middle of the floor, putting him around the elbows, more two-man action with LeBron and AD, and then creatively moving guys around the floor, typically Rui on the weak side. Sometimes he'll cut, sometimes he'll just relocate from the corner to the wing or from the wing to the corner. Like once they score a couple times with the LeBron AD two-man action, all of a sudden, all the attention shifts to let's pack the paint, let's load up against those two, and it leads to AD pick and pops. It leads to maybe a back screen for AD, maybe a stack action with Austin or with D'Lo in there. there, and then AD's getting a lob. LeBron's been throwing a lot of lobs. He's typically been getting 1 to 2 lobs to AD or Christian Coloco or Jackson Hayes during this stretch. And really throughout the season, that there's been a lot of lobs there, with LA having a bit more athleticism at the center spot, but also having sets designed, really just the flow of their offense and the structure of their offense to use back screens to get their fives going downhill, rim running and getting these lobs. But LeBron's done a really good job. Like, some of this stuff is simple, where it's hit aheads, it's finding guys in transition. It's also like the Lakers have been more willing to take shots early in the shot clock. So maybe he will find Austin or Dalton or D'Lo or Rui in transition, and that guy will take a open three, or we'll take a couple dribbles, get to the rim, and that's technically an assist. But there's also been the wrinkles, and LA has been running more progressions through their offense, through their different actions, and you'll see they'll do one thing. If that doesn't work, they go to the next thing, go to the next thing, and within those like third and fourth actions within a possession, that is where there's a breakdown, and that is where LeBron will make you pay. So if you actually, like, his usage percentage has only gone up by 1% over the stretch. So it's not like he's had the ball in his hands that much more. It's actually more so been Austin's has gone down a little bit. In theory, with D'Lo moving to the bench, you thought Austin would actually have a bit of a bigger role offensively, but his role has been about the same. If anything, it's diminished a little bit from a usage perspective. It's actually been AD's usage going up and LeBron's usage going up. The gap there between AD and LeBron has been about 6% in terms of usage percentage over the first 8 games and then over these past 5 games. So that has been unchanged, but this has been an awesome stretch from LeBron. 4 straight triple doubles at any age is just nuts, but to do it at his age with his mileage, it's just next level. He continues to break his own records and set new ones, and this has been the best basketball of the season from LeBron. The one concern I would say has been like the turnovers have been up. If you look at it, he's now had 3 straight games with 6 or more turnovers. He was not turning the ball over as much earlier in the season. So if you are putting more on his plate as a playmaker, I think you have to live with some of these turnovers. I also think he could do a better job. Sometimes he's force feeding passes or thinking a guy's going to be in a certain spot, but the guy's not there yet, and he still throws the pass. And certainly the turnovers are something he can clean up. The defense continues to weigh in depending on the night. I thought some of the defense in San Antonio and New Orleans as the low man, what was not particularly, especially that first half in New Orleans, was not particularly good, but that comes with having a 40-year-old superstar. But overall, LeBron has looked much more like himself. I know there's a lot of chatter. I've covered that chatter of people saying LeBron's washed or LeBron's no longer an all-star or all-NBA guy. Like, that's just not true. He looks like at least a top 15 guy, if not still a top 12 or top 10 guy. And on any given night, he could be the best player on the Lakers, the best player on the floor, the best player in the world. So like that talk, as I've said before, has been premature. I'm interested to see how his role continues to evolve throughout the season, and depending on what moves the Lakers make, if they end up making one, like how that impacts things. But right now, the ball is going through LeBron more than it was before. The Lakers are winning more than they were before, and they've looked pretty good. So I do expect this to continue, at least for the time being. Trend 4 is the transition defense has improved. And this is one where I will entertain the quality of the opponent factoring in, and some of these teams being so bad on both sides of the ball that they have not been able to attack the Lakers in transition, maybe the way that the better teams would be able to, or like there's a lot of factors that go into transition that accumulate. So looking at some of the trends within this that have gone in the Lakers' favor over the stretch is they've gone from 9th in the league in offensive rating over their first 8 games to 1st in the league in offensive rating. So if you're scoring more, and for the Lakers, this has been true, when they're scoring, they're able to get back and they're able to set their defense. And when they set their defense, they have been an above average defense this season. Now, the other factors that I think have gone in their way, the offensive rebounding has been better. Look at the Pelicans game. They had 17 offensive rebounds. That was part of them having a season low 10 opponent fast break points. I think that was a big factor in it. The defensive rebounding has been better, and the turnovers have been better. They've gone from the 8th best team in the league in turnovers to the 2nd best team in in the league in turnovers over that span. So if you look at all these factors of they are rebounding the ball better on both ends, they are scoring more efficiently, they are taking care of the ball. Those are like all those things together are going to lead to fewer transition opportunities for their opponents. And now, again, if we look at it from a pace perspective, the Spurs are 20th in the league in pace. The Sixers are 27th. The Pelicans are 28th. So 3 of those 5 teams are on the slower side in terms of pace and just number of possessions. But Memphis is 4th in the league. Now, some of that has been with Joss, so that's a factor there. And then Toronto's 13th in the league, though. So another above average team. And those were 2 of the Lakers' closer games. And part of that was the transition battle. And then looking at fast break points for all 5 of those teams, you have Toronto at number 1, Memphis at number 3, New Orleans at number 22, and then Philly and San Antonio both tied at 25. So clearly 3 of these teams, New Orleans, Philly, and San Antonio, they don't push the ball. They 3 of the slower teams in the league. They don't get out in transition a lot. So that's a factor here, right? But this has been a talking point since training camp, since the preseason. It was one of the first things JJ Redick identified in terms of weaknesses. It has been a weakness for the Lakers for years. They have ranked in the bottom 10 in terms of opponent fast break points allowed in 4 of the 5 years of the LeBron AD era. So I think part of this is an inherent weakness to LeBron and AD, their style of play, and those guys are living in the paint. It just takes a lot of effort and energy to get from the paint, get from the rim, back to protecting the paint. And Lakers also have had an undersized supporting cast for the most part outside of 1920 and 2021. Like that's been a factor as well as having unathletic backcourts, playing 3-guard lineups, and just playing smaller groups. It is tougher for you to protect the basket in transition, especially in the domain of athleticism and speed. Like that's where LA has kind of come up short sometimes with the supporting cast in recent years. But for now, LA going from 30th through the first eight games to 16th in opponent fast break points. I think that is a positive sign in terms of growth. It is clearly something they're emphasizing and really trying to shore up. Transition defense is probably going to be an issue for this group just based on the way the last few years have gone and just the personnel that they have. But if they can be closer to league average or even closer to like 20th, that is a big step and significant progress compared to being 30th. So we'll see when they play better offenses, better defenses, teams that play faster, can attack them in transition better, how this holds up and if this progress is real and is sustainable. But for now, it's been one of the few positive defensive trends throughout this stretch, and I think it's worth highlighting and talking about. And then the final trend is the re-emergence of Max Christie. And Max Christie was arguably the Lakers' most disappointing player through the first 10, 11 games of the season. I think it was a competition between him and Gabe Vincent. And it got to the point where Max lost his spot in the rotation. Like there was a time there in the preseason and early in the season when it looked like LA wanted Max to be their 6th man, and he was playing the most minutes off the bench. He was the first sub in games. And then the Lakers get back to LA and he loses his spot in the rotation to Cam Reddish. And not only that, Cam Reddish leapfrogs him not only in the rotation, but becomes a starter and really takes a spot that I think the Lakers had hoped Max Christie could take in terms of if there was going to be a splitting of the backcourt up with Austin and D'Lo. I think entering the season, LA, like Max would have been the guy to do that. And it ends up being Cam Reddish. So just a really disappointing first 11 games for Max. He's out of the rotation for the 3 games leading into this 2-game road trip. But then Rui and Jackson are out in San Antonio, which allows Max to re-enter the rotation. He has his best game of the season, scores a season high 11 points, is an integral part of the Lakers defensive game plan, fronting Victor Wembanyama, and is making plays defensively, is making smarter decisions, is making his shots, is playing confidently, playing assertively, and just the best game easily that he's played preseason or regular season this year. Ends up closing the game over Cam Reddish. Then Cam misses the New Orleans game, which means because Rui's out, because Jackson's out, because Cam is out, Max actually starts next to Dalton and Austin in the starting lineup and ends up playing 30 minutes and closing that game, and does not have a good game offensively, but does have an important tip out that secures the win, had a couple of important offensive rebounds in that game, and then also had a mid-range jumper in the fourth quarter while the game was still hanging in the balance and LA needed all the offense it could get. So I think Max Christie looked really good these last couple of games. Cam Reddish obviously did not play in the last game, but the two games before that, the Memphis game and the San Antonio game, I thought were kind of rough for Cam, at least from an offensive perspective. I think teams are aware now that stick a center on him, stick a point guard on him. Like he's a non-factor offensively for the most part. I think the defense slipped a little bit in terms of effectiveness, was still good, but not quite as impactful as his first few games in the rotation. So I think Cam is going to continue to start. I think LA is going to stick with Rui and Cam next to Austin, LeBron, and AD. But if Cam moves back to the bench because he's not playing as well, or because Vando takes it, or they make another starting lineup change, whatever, I wonder the Cam versus Max discussion or decision, it becomes a little bit more interesting, because I think this version of Max, if he can replicate the way he played the last couple of games moving forward, I do think that version of him is just as good, if not better, than Cam. I still think Cam is the better defender, but Max's rebounding, especially with those tip outs, like the tip outs have really been impressive going back to the preseason, but I just think his shooting and the way defenses respect him is at a different level than Cam's shooting in the way that defenses respect him. So I think that there's a path to Max getting back into the rotation, and at a minimum, I think he should be ahead of Gabe Vincent, because I think Gabe Vincent has been the better defender overall. But when you factor in Max's size at 6'6", the rebounding, he's been shooting the ball better overall this season, but especially the last couple of games than Gabe. I just think the Lakers need that size, athleticism, length, more of a switchable defender. Is not going to be picked on as much as Gabe has been in switches. I think Max should be ahead of Gabe, at least in the pecking order. And now it depends who's healthy. Like, again, Rui might be out for the Utah game. Jackson's still out. So Lakers have some openings in the rotation for Max to still play in the short term. But if he keeps this up, I think he should leapfrog Gabe in the pecking order and potentially Cam. Tough start, but this is why I said I was holding my Max stock. I was not giving up on Max yet. I thought he'd figure it out. I wasn't sure when he'd get another chance in the rotation, but LA just can't stay healthy with the supporting cast, and it ended up working out for Max and worked out for the Lakers because they got a couple wins. But I think Max's re-emergence is going to make the rotation decisions even tougher. And you factor Dalton playing at the level he's been at. You think about Christian Coloco showing. I thought the New Orleans game was his best game by far, and he looked like he could do some things defensively and on the glass that Jackson Hayes hasn't been able to consistently do. So Lakers, like the depth has been an issue overall. I'm not going to overlook that. It's certainly been an issue, but I think this stretch here with Dalton breaking out, Christie reemerging, Coloco continuing to grow and develop, like those are young players that could help this group down the road. In the case of Dalton, I expect to help this team down the road and be an important factor, but Coloco battling for the backup center spot, Max Christie battling for like that 8th, 9th spot in the rotation. I think those things are certainly possible with what we've seen. Now, as the schedule gets tougher, some of these things, like how does LeBron have to shift into more of a scoring mode? Does Dalton Knecht, can he shoot as well now that he's going to be an even bigger part of the scouting report and teams just scheming and trying to take him out? How does the transition defense hold up against better teams? Where's Max Christie in this all? The starting lineup, and do they? How's D'Lo coming off the bench, and do they consider another starting lineup change? And like, there are more questions that come out of all these trends, but these are 5 things that stood out to me during the 5-game winning streak. Let me know if I missed a trend or something that you've observed that I did not hit on this episode. Let me know in the comment section on YouTube. But that will do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for watching and listening. For those on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. And for those listening listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back Tuesday with my vlog from the 5-game road trip, and then after the game with my post-game reaction to the Jazz game. It's an NBA Cup game, first time we'll be seeing the Lakers' new court. I will talk to you then.